22 days ago, Joe Biden dropped out. We have not had an interview of or press conference with Vice President Harris in 22 days. Is that significant?
Oh, absolutely. It was also significant that during the very brief press availability she had outside of Air Force One in Detroit, she took 6 questions. None of her answers were more than 2 sentences, but one of them was, "When will you be doing a sit-down interview on camera?" And she said, "I have to talk to my staff. We're hoping to get one done before the end of the month." This was on August 9th. She's hoping to get there before the end of August. She's trying to schedule. She didn't say we would hold the interview. She's trying to schedule the interview before the end of that. Hey, Hugh, when do people start early voting?
September.
Yes, September 20th,
Yep.
I believe, is the September 16th,
Yeah.
actually, in Pennsylvania is when your first day for early voting. So she is
Okay. Well,
attempting to run out the clock, yeah, to put it all the way,
why
all the
why is
way
she
through.
doing this, Jim? Why is there a
Oh,
blackout?
Hugh, have you ever seen a Kamala Harris interview?
I know. I
Like,
just wanted to hear it in your
she's
own
terrible.
words.
Yes,
But
because you never know. I haven't been to the border, and I haven't been to Europe either. Like,
yeah.
but because they know if they give her a good speech, and her speeches are fine, and she reads off a teleprompter. You notice, by the way, Hugh, she sounds like a pro freedom and democracy and libertarian in these speeches. There's nothing about, I'm going to raise the top tax rate. There's nothing about, I don't believe that crossing the border should be a crime. I don't believe that an illegal immigrant is a criminal. None of this stuff. She's completely different from who she was in 2019. And every time you point out
Oh,
something she had as positions as presidential candidate, there's a vague statement from a staffer. Never her on camera. Never her saying it. Oh, no, that's not her position anymore. Well, what is her position? TBD. TBD. You'll
is it
learn.
fair to say,
It's like,
Jim, that she will be
yes.
the most left-wing president in American history, beyond Barack Obama, beyond Joe Biden, beyond even Hillary Claire? I don't think people have any idea what progressives, what the left in San Francisco has done. She is part of the San Francisco Democratic establishment. That's what birthed her. That's her idea set. Does anyone have any idea how bad she would be for this country?
There is nothing in her record to point to any iota of centrism, any molecule of not being as far left as possible. Her go-to move every step of the way has been to push the Overton window as far to the left as possible. That's just the way it is. And Tim Walz is not going to be an anchor keeping her there or anything like that. Tim Walz did the same thing in Minnesota, with like arguably even more incompetence and worse scandals and more. The way the quickest way to summarize the reign of Tim Walz is basically think of the Minnesota state government as a giant pile of money that everyone wants to get a piece of. And he is the sleeping bank guard. He is the guy who's not watching it, which is why they've had some of the worst and most worst cases of waste, fraud, and abuse of any state government in the country. Even bigger than
All right,
California,
now
which is a
I want
really
to
it's a
ask you about Walls, because overnight another stolen valor allegation arose. Dwayne dove in, found the audio and video of it. I want you to listen to it, then I'll give you the backdrop to it. Cut number 38.
And then the years that happened after that classroom, I had the privilege of serving in this state's National Guard. And when I left, I had a 2-year-old. When I came home, I had a 3-year-old. But as I listened to Jill and I listened to Mariah, the guilt, I came home and my daughter went on. And when you're 2 and 3, she knew no difference. That's not true for some. They can't do that. And over the preceding years of watching us, and as our nation changed, and as our political systems became more difficult for all of us to understand, I stood one night in the dark of night on the tarmac at Bagram and watched a military ramp ceremony. And if you've seen it, which these folks, many have, unfortunately, you don't leave the same. And it makes you wonder, what are we doing? What are we trying to get to?
Jim, what's your reaction to that portion of that speech on the 20th anniversary of 9/11?
on the tarmac of Bagram, huh? if the vice presidential nominee was willing to do interviews, and he hasn't done any of them either, but that'd be a great thing to ask about. So, what was it like there on the Bagram tarmac, and how? When were you there? And and if that's not true, why did you say so?
Well,
Today's morning, Joe.
apparently there is an allegation. The rebuttal is that he did a codel to Afghanistan, and this happened during the congressional visit. I've
Well,
got
then you
different
better
years.
specify that. When I went there as a member of Congress, not wearing my country's uniform, not carrying a weapon of war in war, as he said in another appearance. Look, today's morning, Joel, I put together like 6 or 7 cases of this in which he was described either in his campaign materials or in magazine profiles, the Wall Street Journal. All kinds of folks kept describing him as a veteran of Afghanistan. I think what it is he kept saying, I deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Operation Enduring Freedom was the U.S. mission in Afghanistan, but he was deployed to Europe, right? When he says it that way, everybody thinks that meant, oh, he was in Afghanistan. And I think it's very hard to believe this is accidental. It's very hard. And the right thing to do, like my dad, who I just got to spend a week visiting last week, Dad was in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, but he never describes himself as a Vietnam War veteran. He was in the Navy. He was in the city. He was not in combat by any stretch of the imagination. And he's always very clear about that because he doesn't want to be perceived as claiming some sort of experience or credit or heroism or something like that. What he did was sufficient. It is great that Tim Walz wore his country's uniform in the Minnesota National Guard. Fantastic. But don't run around leaving the impression that you were in Afghanistan when you weren't. And it happened far too many times. And too many times he's been on C-SPAN and people have said this and he does not correct them. He was comfortable with people having that erroneous perception. And I think there are a decent number of people in this country who are going to say that's close enough to stolen valor.
Yeah, I believe that this audio is dispositive of the pattern and practice of attempting to mislead about your service. And I have not said a word about this because I am a civilian. And it's true what he says about deployments. Deployments are hard, even if you're not in combat. My son-in-law is deployed right now, and so I watch my daughter managing 4 kids, and it's hard. But it's not the same as being in a war zone or doing that. And it's a pattern. He wants people to think until the last 3 weeks that he was an Afghan war veteran.
And by the way, let's point out, if you're a U.S. military, you're wearing your country's uniform over in Europe, the risk is significantly less, but it's not zero. The world has terrorists. The world has people who love to blow up U.S. military bases over in Europe. There are the shooting up of the guys over in Germany during the Cold War. Was it Abu Nidal or one of those terrorist groups? I mean, like, you wear your country's uniform anywhere outside, hell, even in this country. There's a risk, thinking about Fort Hood and things like that. You assume a certain level of risk. God bless you for doing that. You don't need to gild the lily. And it's something very intriguing about this that, Tim Walz, clearly on some level, he believed that he wanted people, he was comfortable with people thinking of him as an Afghanistan war veteran. And he wasn't. And
that's it. That's well put. Deception is at the heart of the Harris-Walz campaign. They are not who they want you to think they are.
Look, it's got to be about pineapple tree memes. It's got to be about vibes. And I have another column on somebody's desk where I could give other columnists grief about writing about the vibes of the Kamala Harris campaign and writing about the joy. Hey, Hugh, have you noticed it's a campaign with joy? But here, look, what are they supposed to do? Analyze the policy section of the website? There is none. What are they supposed to do? Analyze her policy position? She doesn't have any. So, there's really not much to go on other than, wow, look at how happy Democrats are, which is great. I mean, it's, they all sound like a REM video of shiny, happy people. But at some point, this is not the job of the president is not to generate good memes. The job of the president is not to give off vibes. The job of the president is to be commander in chief and to run the executive branch. And the idea that some of this started with Obama as the celebrity in chief and the doing the basketball picks and bringing in the influencers and all that kind of that's all that's icing on the cake. The job is the cake, but apparently Democrats won't hear about it.